All right, welcome. If you're getting ready for the Queensland bar exams, you've come to the right place. Today, we're going to get tactical. We're diving deep into one of the most powerful weapons in your procedural arsenal, Rule 171 of the Uniform Civil Procedure Rules.
Okay, let's set the scene. Picture this, and trust me, you will face this, both in your exams and out in the real world. You get served a pleading from your opponent, and it's a total mess. It's confusing, it's baseless, maybe it's even scandalous. So what's your first move? So here's our game plan for today. First, we'll look at that bad pleading. Then we'll break down the 5 grounds under Rule 17, 1 Subrule 1. We'll cover the court's power, the modern view of pleadings, what happens with leave to replead, and finally, we'll talk costs, jurisdiction, and strategy. Let's get into it. All right, Section 1, your opponent's bad pleading. So when that mess of a document lands on your desk, what's your go-to tool? Well, your primary weapon is found right there in the UCPR. And that tool is Rule 171. This is the big one. It gives the court the power at any stage of a proceeding to strike out a pleading or even just part of one if it's deficient. You can really think of it as the gatekeeper for procedural fairness. Okay, on to Section 2. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty, the 5 grounds. The real heart of Rule 171 is in Subrule 1. It gives you 5, count 'em, 5 distinct reasons to strike out a pleading. Now, for your exams, you absolutely have to know these cold. So let's treat this like a checklist. All right, here they are. These are your 5 gateways under Rule 171, Subrule 1. Your application must hang its hat on at least one of these. So paragraph A, it discloses no reasonable cause of action or defense. Paragraph B, it has a tendency to prejudice or delay the fair trial. Paragraph C, it's unnecessary or scandalous. Paragraph D, it's frivolous or vexatious. And finally, E, it's otherwise an abuse of the process of the court. Seriously, drill these into your brain. Rule 171, Subrule 1, paragraphs A through E. Now let's focus on that first one, ground A, because it's probably the most common. The key thing to remember about Rule 171, Subrule 1, paragraph A, is that you're not just saying their case is a bit weak. No, you have to show that it's completely hopeless. The case law uses terms like clearly untenable or could not possibly succeed. It is a very high bar, so you're arguing that the case is basically dead on arrival. So let's say you've made your case. You've established one of those grounds under Subrule 1. What happens next? What can the court actually do about it? Well, the powers under Subrules 2 and 3 are pretty significant. Okay, look at this. Under Rule 171, Subrule 2, the court can obviously strike out the pleading. But, and this is a big deal, it can also order costs and even calculate them on an indemnity basis. That's a huge strategic weapon. And then you've got Subrule 3, which says the court can look at evidence beyond just the pleading itself. So it's not operating in a vacuum. It's an incredibly broad and flexible power. All right, Section 4, Pleadings in the Modern Era. Now, before we go any deeper, we need to take a step back and understand the philosophy behind all this. Because the way courts think about pleadings today is worlds away from how they used to. Just look at the difference here. Historically, pleading was this super technical, restrictive game where one wrong word could sink your case. It was all about the literal meaning, which led to this ambush at trial style of litigation. But today, it's much more robust and functional. The focus now, in our modern case management world, is simple. Does the pleading fairly tell the other side what case they have to meet? That's the key question. And this quote from Chief Justice Martin in Barclay Molum just nails it. He says, "The court should be reluctant to waste time and money extensively debating the application of technical pleadings rules that come from a totally different era. It's a clear message, get to the real issues, don't get bogged down in old-fashioned procedural games." Okay, Section 5, Leave to Replead. So congratulations, you've won your strikeout application. The judge agrees the pleading is deficient. Is it game over? Well, usually not. The next battle is almost always about whether your opponent gets another chance to fix it. And you have to understand, refusing to grant leave to replead is a huge deal. It can be the final nail in the coffin for their entire case. It effectively shuts them out of court. And because of that, judges are generally pretty reluctant to do it. The default position is to give people a chance to have their day in court. Just how high is that bar? Well, this quote from XBT v. State of Queensland lays it out perfectly. A refusal requires a compelling conclusion that a maintainable cause of action cannot be pleaded. In other words, you have to convince the judge that the problem isn't just a mistake. It's a fatal, incurable flaw, that no amount of editing is ever going to save this claim. But, and this is a big but, the court's patience isn't unlimited. If a party keeps failing to get it right, a judge's willingness to grant another chance starts to wear thin. The case of Comprite is a great example. The court gave them what it called a probably final opportunity. You can almost hear the judge's sigh in that judgment. It's a clear warning shot. This is your last chance, make it count.
Okay, let's wrap this up with our final section: costs, jurisdiction, and strategy. We're going to pull everything together and look at 3 really critical strategic points to keep in your back pocket. Remember we talked about that serious weapon in Rule 171, Subrule 2? The power to order indemnity costs? It's a fantastic deterrent to stop people from filing shoddy pleadings. But look closely at the rule. See that word? The court may order them. And that one little word is crucial. And this leads to a classic trap for young players. So you win your strikeout application. You proved the pleading was hopeless. Does that mean you automatically get indemnity costs? Is it a sure thing? The answer, and you need to remember this, is no. It's not automatic. Chief Justice DeJersey made this crystal clear in Gideona. He said the rule leaves the award of indemnity costs on a discretionary basis. So yeah, the power is there, but you still have to argue for it. You have to convince the judge that the other side's conduct was so unreasonable that a special cost order is warranted. And one last vital point. Don't forget that on top of all these rules, a superior court always has its own inherent jurisdiction. This is the fundamental power the court has to protect its own processes from being abused. It exists completely separately from Rule 171. Think of it as the court's ultimate power to ensure fairness and stop people from playing games with the system, as cases like General Steel Industries have long established. So let's leave you with this final thought exercise. Put yourself in the judge's shoes for a moment. You've just struck out a pleading for the second time. The other barrister is on their feet, begging for one last chance to fix it. What are you balancing in your mind? On one hand, you have the fundamental principle that everyone deserves a fair shot to have their case heard. On the other, there's the need for finality, for justice not to be delayed, and the costs that are piling up for the other side. That right there, that balancing act, navigating that tension, is the real art of being an advocate in this area.